Right, I think we're all set, Moira.
I see that we are live. Okay. Good evening, everybody. This is the Board of Education Policy Committee meeting. It is Tuesday, September 29th, 2020. Our apologies to any folks attending the meeting remotely or watching us remotely. We did have some technical difficulties that we are hopefully have sorted out. And I would also like, on the heels of that, just to explain that we are conducting this meeting both kind of in a hybrid format, similar to how we're conducting school right now, where we are having some of our board members and district leadership attend live in person from the Guilford High School Media Center. And then there are others of us who are attending remotely via Zoom. So please understand if we have a little difficulty in communication, it's really just us getting used to this format. And the other thing I would just ask that those attending from the media center, if before you speak, if you could just identify by name who is speaking, because it's hard for us to see all of you. You're kind of in a distance from us. So it might help also with meeting minutes that we can identify who's speaking at the time. So on that note, I'd just like to call to order the meeting. And can I have a motion to call the meeting to order? Mary. I see someone waving. I think that's Joe. Thank you. Okay, great. Item number 2 on our agenda tonight is to act on policy committee meeting minutes. We have had a few meetings since April and in July, just to obviously address some kind of special responses we needed to make in some policies in the district. Can I, regarding item 2.1, the April 27th, 2020 minutes, does anybody have any questions or comments? I'll look and see. I don't see anything. So could I have a motion to approve the minutes of April 27th?
I move to accept non-Delventura.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Mary. Great. So item number 2.2 is our meeting on July 13th, 2020. This is a special meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting? Or well, first, let me ask, are there any questions or comments, obviously? Okay, no. So could someone, is there a motion to approve those minutes? I see Kristen. Can't see if somebody else indicated a motion.
Second.
Second, thank you. Okay, great, thank you. So item number 2.3 is the July 20th, 2020 special meeting minutes, sorry.
This is Paul. Can we just vote on that motion before we move forward?
Yeah,
So you've got
yeah.
a motion and a second, and now just ask for all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, item number 2.3, the July 20th, 2020 meeting minutes. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Okay, I don't see anything. So could I please have a motion to approve those minutes?
Joe Galino, make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. And could I have everybody vote in favor of approving minutes from July 20th?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, great. Item number 3 is review the new Title IX policy and regulation. There's been some significant changes made. I believe I spoke with Jason Bowden, our assistant superintendent, about this last week. And so is Jason there in attendance? It's hard to see everybody. Hi, Jason. Thank you. So maybe you would like to speak to this, the policy revisions. You know, we'll go into more specifics, but if you could just give an overview of what we're.
Sure. Jason Bowden speaking. If you've been following the Title IX legislation over the past year, you'd be aware of the fact that there were major changes made in the spring to the Title IX regulations and policy, especially as it relates to schools and universities. It is almost a complete rewrite of our current policy, and it centers primarily on a broader description of what constitutes a Title IX violation. That's one component of it. The other component is a very detailed investigation process after a complaint is made, which is included in the updated policy. And then the third part speaks primarily to what the due process pieces for both the complainant and the respondent. Um, the onus now on the regulation and policy based on the federal response is really protecting any individual who is forwarding in a complaint regarding discrimination within the school system. So the detail behind the current legislation is such that schools must respond, and they must respond in a way that not only provides support to both the complainant and the respondent, but also has a fail-safe system in place in terms of its investigation, whereby multiple individuals are part of determining the outcome of the investigation. So it is not falling on the onus of one person. It is following a due process protocol that is far more extensive than we currently have. And I'm currently being trained in the investigation process, but I'm not one that by law can do an investigation. So therefore, our principals will be trained in the next month or so to be able to follow the new investigative procedures so that we have that in place for any complaint that may be made. As you know, this legislation came out as a result of accusations of school systems and colleges and universities not pursuing investigations in great detail that have been made. I'm not saying that as a blanket statement, but there was criticisms made that, especially at the post-secondary level, that investigations failed to protect those that were making claims and put the university or the school ahead of the complainant. So there are numerous changes. For me to redline the current policy, all you would see is red line in it. So what we have done is Jerry Fiandella and myself have contacted CABE. CABE has all of the components of the new legislation in the policy in front of you. And it's split into two almost identical sections, one related to student complaints that are made in terms of a discrimination or harassment issue, and one for staff members. But they're virtually the same, follow the same protocols. The only element of the current policy and regulation that we are going to keep in at this point in time of the existing policy is 4112 A through let's see here. F. A through E. I'm going to keep F out right now because those forms are going to be updated at this point. We're waiting to see what the new forms will look like. And we are moving away from including forms in the policy and regulation booklet. However, this portion of the policy and reg speaks specifically to hiring practices and affirmative action, which the new policy and regulation speaks, you'll notice towards the end of the regulation piece speaks to the hiring process, but it's only a paragraph in there regarding discrimination. So in light of that, we decided, at least for now, to keep this section in because it's more detailed in terms of what constitutes a discrimination in regards to the hiring process. So that would be the only element that's kept in, everything else will be replaced.
What does it look like for training? Besides the principals, is there anybody else involved that needs to be trained up on this?
We are required by the state of Connecticut to have all of our employees trained in sexual harassment training, and which includes the new Title IX.
This is a new training?
They receive a certificate. It's a training that is put forward by the Civil Rights Department of the state of Connecticut. And because of COVID, it was extended to the end of the year, but it is good for 10 years unless they update the policy again. But we're mandated to have all of our staff members trained, and we're pretty much to the point now where everybody is. I'm working through now our new hires and our timesheet employees like building substitutes and so forth.
There is an additional level of training. This is Paul that Jason referenced, where Jason is going through training now about how to appropriately conduct investigations. And he will then train all of our building level supervisors, the principals, and how to conduct those investigations. The investigations will now be tiered. Initial complaints will be investigated by the principals. Jason would function as an appeal level to that, and then ultimately I would function as an additional appeal level should it go to that level. But Jason's receiving that investigative training, and then we'll train the principals in that work moving forward.
There's also a direct parallel, this is Jason again, to mandated reporting training, which we know has to be done every 3 years, and we keep a record of our staff who is trained in mandated reporting in terms of protecting our students within the district. But there's a mandated reporting part of this new policy. So once a school or a school employee or a school administrator is made aware of a discrimination issue, the clock starts ticking now. You are mandated now under federal and state law to begin an investigation. It can't be dismissed, it can't be not attended to, and it will result in a full investigation and report.
Okay.
I did send out this afternoon, there was a detailed summary of all the changes. I know it came out fairly late, but I sent out just as a resource for you and to assure you that the components within that document are all embedded in CABE's policy and regulation.
So Jason, I'm to understand though, this is time sensitive, obviously, because these changes came out in late summer, correct?
Correct, they went into effect, I believe August 1st. So I'd like to move this forward. We're already operating, under these guidelines, but I'd like to codify them in our policy and regulation book as soon as we can.
Okay.
When we should be able to have done by the November. This is Paul again, Maura.
Yes.
The statute supersedes any policy that we have in place. So
Right.
I would say that as long as we could have this to your regular board meeting in October, and then for the second, for receive in October, act on in November, I would think we're fine.
Okay.
Is your microphone over there? Is it so loud?
No,
Do either of you have a microphone on?
It's your microphone, Kevin, because we just heard you speak. There you
Thank
go.
you. That's really embarrassing when I'm that loud, but I created this.
Okay, so then on that note, I guess we should make two separate motions because we're replacing two different policy sections, correct? So before I do that though, are there any other questions from anybody on the committee? I know it's a lengthy policy change and there's a lot of information in there, but we'll still have adequate time also as we move it forward to the full board.
Exactly. You've got to read that document if you like before the October meeting.
Right. Okay,
Joe,
so
yeah.
on that, sorry.
This is Joe. I have a quick question. Okay, so since you're getting trained right now to deliver this training to the principals and staff, do you have a specific resource or contact that you're working with for stuff that pops up that you may not have the proper resources to?
If something happens next week.
Yeah. Great question. This is Jason Bowden. Respond to that. Two things. That our contact in district is with the Office of Civil Rights within the state government, and Adrian Wood is the commissioner for that. So if I had any specific questions regarding the investigation that we do, I would contact his office. I have already been through a video training seminar through Shipman and Viven this summer. So I've been through the protocol piece, with them, but I want to take the course in 2 weeks through the CHRO office to just make sure I understand everything fully.
And if we had any concerns with an evolving incident, we would include our labor attorney for
Right.
guidance if necessary.
I don't want to use it throwing like.
No, it's a good question.
Yeah, no, great question.
Okay. So then I'm going to break this up into the two separate sections then, since we've reviewed the new Title IX policy and regulation. Item 3.1 is to replace number 4112 in our policy manual regarding personnel section. Is there a motion to move this this item 3.1 forward to the full board at our next general meeting?
So move, John Delventura.
And Mary, I see second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so item 3.2 is to replace policy number 4004 in the students section. Do I have a motion to move that policy change forward to the full board meeting in October?
So moved.
Mary? Do I have a second?
Second, John.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So we will move both of those items to the full review of the board at our next general board meeting in October.
Thank you.
Item number 4 is to review the new procurement purchasing policy. And I believe Linda is going to speak to that item, if that's okay.
Yes, hi, everybody. So this policy came up as part of the annual audit of the town through Bloom Shapiro. It was one of the comments that they put in the management letter back in December of 2019. This is a federal requirement for anybody that receives federal funding that we must have this procurement guidelines in our policy. The town's already adopted one, which I believe you have a copy of. We can refine it and change it. But one of the big things that came up was the conflict of interest, because we don't have a ethics policy in our policy book. There's one for the board, but not for employees. So I sent out earlier an email with a couple options on things that we could possibly use. The way I read this, we don't have to have a separate policy right now for conflict of interest or ethics. As long as it's stated in this policy, we are covered for now. And we can look at doing a ethics policy at some other point. But we need to get this policy on and going because we're actually overdue. We should have had this in place a while ago for the federal.
So we'd like to move this one forward tonight, and for purposes of cross-referencing, we will have an ethics recommendation for you at the next board, at the next policy meeting.
And Linda, this is Jason Bowden, just to further summarize, what you see in front of you is we're basically adopting the town's procurement policy that is already in existence. Is that correct?
Yes, the only change that going to be a couple changes, one with that ethics code, and then the purchase value. The federal government has since revised the standards. So on page 5, the small purchases is now $3,000 to $149,999. So any range is the small purchases, which we would have to follow these guidelines for anything in that range.
Can you repeat that amount, please?
$3,000 to $149,999. Small purchases threshold. And then anything $150,000 up would follow the other purchasing procedures. A lot of it has more to do with construction and any use of federal funds, but we have to have this policy done, have to have this policy in place in order to continue to receive federal funds.
And Linda, it's Jason again, just as again, another summary. Procurement is the basis for this policy is to prevent fraud, correct, and procurement within a town with town funds. You can't ethically, if you have a family that is in a business. I'm just trying to explain why is there a need for such a policy?
Right. So part of the policy is to prevent, giving business to a family member or to something that where you have your own personal interest in it. The other part of it is to ensure that federal funds are being used wisely, that we're not purchasing something with federal funds that's considered unnecessary. So it's to ensure that our federal funds are being used properly and effectively and in the most cost-efficient manner. And I think it even specifies that we look at minority and women-owned businesses, that we could keep that as a consideration when awarding a bid, that we're looking at any woman or minority-owned business a little bit more favorably.
And to be clear, the auditor didn't have a problem with our practice in any of these areas. The auditor simply suggested that we should have written policy clarifying this, and that was the only thing that was lacking.
Right. It's a federal mandate that we have this in place. And if we don't, we could lose our federal funding. So like the Title I grants and some of our other federal funds.
Right, but it's the missing policy
wrong with-
that's concerned with our practice.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep. So again, if we can start moving this forward, and then we will get the ethics piece in place as well, and we'll
Sure.
just get
Yep,
this in
makes
place
sense.
as soon as possible.
You're muted, Maura.
Yep. So we're comfortable moving it forward to the general board so long as we have the ethics piece prepared prior to that. And we'll have
Yeah.
time to review that exhibit beforehand.
That is correct. That's Jason.
Okay. Okay. So then can I have a motion to move forward the new procurement purchasing policy as presented tonight to the general board meeting in October?
So moved. Second.
Second, thank you. This is a little hard. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Linda.
Linda.
Okay, moving on to item number 5 to discuss new operations of schools. This is another policy, new operations of schools during COVID-19 pandemic policy. Jason, again, I'll throw it to you just to discuss the language that you've developed for this policy.
Sure. This policy comes to us via legal counsel review regarding some of the guidelines that have come out, not only from the CDC, but from the Department of Health, from the state of Connecticut. It's a first in a series of COVID-related policies and regulations that will align with our town plan, our school plan related to what we're doing in the educational process during COVID. We decided to start with a policy around face mask and face coverings. What you see in front of you is literally taken from both the CDC and from the addendum 11, I believe. Is it 11 face
Addendum
mask?
959, it was one of the addendums.
No, it's 11.
11.
Addendum 11, and then the frequently asked questions portions from the Department of Health. It is in alignment with all current standards regarding mask wearing. And I put it forward to you tonight to move forward to the board as written.
Yeah, I just want to note that this is the first and most important one because masks are going to be essential to our ability to keep schools open. And if I can draw your attention to the bottom of page 1, it makes really clear that exemptions for mask wearing are going to be limited. We are in fact taking a very strong position in alignment with the rest of the state that if you intend to be in school, you need to be masked when in school. And legal opinion has come out that as we are affording the distance option, it is totally okay for us to take this firm a position. You see lots of businesses that say no mask, no service. We will expect students in school to be masked. There are very limited exceptions to that. And in places where that may be something that the family is not in favor of, then those students will have the option to afford themselves of the distance learning option. So again, we wanted to have it out because it is so foundational to keeping schools open, to keeping students healthy. And because of that strong position, we wanted to make sure that this, above everything else, was backed up in policy and not just part of our reopening plan.
Laura, are you unmuted?
All right, I'm trying to keep myself on mute, not to get any feedback to you guys. So a couple questions I just had. One was under the first paragraph under personal protection, including masks and face coverings. It just says it must cover both the mouth and nose and comply with state and federal guidance. And I know we had some conversations in the late summer about, neck gaiters and bandanas and what constitutes, an effective mask. Are we going to be given that language, or is that going to be identified in a different policy? I'm just curious are we leaving it intentionally non-specific?
Yeah, we're leaving it vague so that we can keep up with the evolving science and guidance without having to change the policy every single time. So
Okay.
neck gaiters were acceptable a few weeks ago, and now neck gaiters are no longer acceptable. But there are now neck gaiters being marketed with insertable filters. And so we want to leave it general enough that we don't have to come back to you every time the state updates their guidance.
That's fine. Okay. And then the next paragraph, it just says during, talking about mask breaks. It says during these breaks, students may talk. However, students must avoid loud talking, yelling, or singing. Generally, such mask breaks should be no more than 15 minutes. Something that was brought to my attention by a few parents, and I am a parent of a child at Baldwin, is that, and I'm not taking a position on this, it was just a question posed. The kids are being told, because they're eating in their classrooms, that there's no speaking while they're eating their lunch. And so, because lunch is longer at Baldwin, it's 30 minutes that they're in that classroom, and then they go out for recess. So I'm just curious how this does or doesn't align with each building's kind of way of dealing with, their circumstances, their limitations in terms of being able to distance the kids. And do we need to address that, or, do you feel like this is an adequate way to?
We think it does. Yeah, we think it does align in all of the buildings where the students are eating in the classrooms. They're being discouraged from talking during that time where they have their mask off and they are in fact eating. Teachers in the classrooms are actually offering options to help discourage that, like playing a movie. And so the students may be watching a movie that takes 20 lunch breaks to finish, but they're going to keep watching it in installments during that time. That naturally discourages the talking between students. Students will not be disciplined, however, if during the time that they have their masks off, so we wanted to be clear in the policy that it's not that they may not speak, but it's that during the actual time that you're eating, we're discouraging conversation between and among the students. And we're not simply discouraging it by saying, sit in silence and be quiet. We're going to try to find ways to fill that space and give them something else to do. When students are done eating and they put their mask on, even if they haven't been excused yet for recess, then of course they may continue to have conversation once those masks have gone back on. And so there may be some difference in how that message is being delivered, but we do believe that the policy is consistent with discouraged, not forbidden. And then obviously when they have the chance to get outside in recess, they certainly have the opportunity to talk with each other. But we did want to make sure that usually when you think of a lunchroom, you think of loud, you think of elevated noise level, and that's something we really are working hard to limit, because raising of voices when those masks are off can create aerosolized particles, and we want to avoid that.
Okay, great. Does anyone else have any questions regarding this? I know this is another item that we would like to move forward and expediently, because like I said, there'll be other policies to follow, but this one is pretty pertinent, as obviously we have the kids in school, and especially as we go into the next few weeks. Does anybody have any other questions regarding this?
I got a question. Joe Galito, question.
Hi,
I was
Joe.
reading the paragraph below personal protection, including masks and face coverings. there's a line, and I'm going to read it out to you guys. It says, all students and school personnel must always wear a face mask or other cloth material while on school property or a school bus. This is my question. This requirement also applies to parents dropping off or picking up children or any other visitor to school facilities. To clarify that for me, does that mean as a parent dropping off their child have to have the mask on in the car when they're
No.
dropping off?
Yeah, no, so if you were walking your child to the front door,
Okay,
or if you were
okay.
dropping your
Outside the
student
door.
I
off at
wanted
the,
the
yes.
clarification on that.
Yep. Yep, obviously, we're not gonna try to police what happens inside a family car, but if someone's parking and walking their student to the front door,
Yes,
we'd like
understood.
that person to be.
No, no,
masked.
understood. I thought it meant dropping, it said dropping off or picking
Yeah.
up.
Yeah,
thinking-
no, it's.
No,
I had to
Yep,
read that
makes
several
sense.
times
No,
myself.
if you have questions, it's helpful for all of us.
Yep.
just to
Yep.
hear, right?
Good question. Okay, so then if there are no other questions regarding this new policy, could I have a motion to move the new operations of schools during COVID-19 pandemic policy to the next general Board of Ed meeting?
Joe Guido, motion.
Do I have a second? Mary, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else to discuss regarding policy committee issues, I will give anybody a chance right now, but otherwise we can adjourn this meeting until our next workshop meeting at 7:30. Can I have a motion to conclude the meeting? Mary, Kristen, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Moira,
Okay,
thank you
sure.
for sharing our first hybrid meeting.
Laura, question for you. How is our audio? Can you hear us okay?
It's good. The closer, yeah, I can hear you all. Paul feels a little further, but no, we can hear you. I can hear you all pretty well.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Can you
Great.
guys hear us?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're great.
You're great.
Okay, good. Yay. All right, so good. It